Hello and welcome in today's session. Hope you are attentive and will make an attempt to grasp every bit of this lecture. For today, we have chosen the topic Historical Perspectives of Conservation. The conservation of the environment is a subject of serious and wider concern. We are, however, inadequately equipped to deal with this concern in the absence of any significant documentation of the subject in the textual traditions of India. The idea of conservation is probably as old as human existence, but the use of the term in modern writings is relatively recent. Moreover, the environmental problems in recent decades have attracted a lot of popular and governmental interests and attention. Environmental matters are becoming a critical part of the political discourse in almost every country. The viability of human survival in the wake of ever-increasing population of the earth is becoming a matter of concern for humans. Conservation is considered as protection of wild nature or already stressed natural resources. Generally, the most accepted definition presented at the World Conservation Strategy by International Union for Conservation of Nature and Natural Resources is that of the management of human use of the biosphere so that it may yield the greatest sustainable benefit while maintaining its potential to meet the needs and aspirations of future generations. The conservation is not simply the preservation of wild nature or biodiversity, but it also encompasses the larger issue of the usage of natural resources. At the same time, it also implies the preservation of some level of biodiversity that is essential to the functioning of the ecosystems and the survival of mankind along their other living creatures. Historically, people in industrialized countries have not perceived the importance of environmental conservation in the same way as people in developing countries have done. North Americans, due to their cultural history, have to glorify nature to decree its defilement and to propose a back-to-nature type solution. As a consequence of their colonial history, Third World people have tended to be much more concerned with the social origins and human consequences of environmental degradation. Conservation is essentially for the survival of humans as well as life forms on Earth. The existence of life forms on Earth has been made possible by a very complex combination of interactions among innumerable factors. It's acknowledged that any large-scale disturbance in the availability or functioning of any of the components of the environment would lead to environmental decay and ultimately cause the extinction of life. So, the conservation of not only the quantity of the components but also the quality of the components is also very important. As such, plants are considered the primary producers, but their relevance concerning the generation of oxygen cannot be undermined. Therefore, a factor which hampers the growth of plant life on Earth will lead to the paucity of oxygen and will disturb the proper functioning of the environment. Certain aspects of conservation, such as the prevention of population, have more narrow but immediate importance. There are numerous examples of the serious effect of pollution in the air, water, or soil on the human health and survival. Another related but equally relevant aspect of conservation has been its economic value. Mostly, it has been realized in terms of the costs to humans. The same applies to the unrestrained cutting of forests for petty gains. Deforestation would ultimately not only influence the food chain but also lead to the depletion of oxygen in the atmosphere. short-term economic considerations will ultimately lead to disruption of the functioning of the environment, and any rectifying measure will be capital intensive, defeating the basic purpose. Indian view of conservation. Cutting across historical and philosophical debates, the one principle which underlies and provides unity in Indian philosophy, as also the continuity of vision and perception, is the assertion that man is only one among all living matters. Man's life depends upon and is conditioned by all that surrounds him and sustain him, namely inanimates, mineral and animate, aquatic, vegetative and gaseous life. It's therefore man's duty to constantly remind him of the environment and ecology. In the Indian worldview, as also of other ancient civilizations and cultures, life on earth emerged from the eternal waters that hold the potency of fires. Indian sciences and philosophy, and thus culture, develop on the postulate of the everlasting movement of creation, degeneration and regeneration of the cosmos. The traditional society is structured on a fourfold control system that orders human life, its subsistence and desires. Life is ordered into four successive stages, or ashramas, from learning and performing to gradual indifference and final withdrawal. This unfold ordering of life is called purusartha. That's the making of a cultural person, purush. At a higher level of consciousness, the cultural person is transformed into cosmic person. The Indian theory of nature and ecology is enormously affected by the theory of creation that recognized that the same supreme being creates every element, object and living being in the universe, and that man has no special dominion over nature. The early Indian socio-religious systems enshrine respect for nature in the following basic elements: faith in a supreme power, non-dualistic view of this supreme being, set of rules defining duties in consonance with the cosmic order. The early scriptures of India provide useful references ascribing practical conservation tips that directly relate to this enshrined respect for nature. Vedas, Upanishads, Puranas, and other scriptures gave detailed description of trees, plants, wildlife, along with their importance to the community. Trees have been considered an essential part of Indian homes. The significance of plants and trees to human life is further exemplified in Vara Purana, which advocates regular plantation as a means to achieve heaven. In Matsya Purana and Madhya Purana, also there is a description of a great plantation ceremony, Vriksha Mahotsav. In Matsya Purana, plantation of trees has been equated with the progeny of 10 sons. Indians accept nature as divinity, and as such, various trees and plants are used in religious ceremonies and worship. Some trees and plants are considered so sacred that it is assumed that particular gods or goddesses have made their abode in them. In Narsimha Purana, tree has been personified as God Brahma itself. Atharva Veda considers the peepal tree as the abode of various gods. Names of various trees and their association with god and goddesses are Ashoka, Buddha, Indra, Visavi, etc. Peepal, Vishnu, Lakshmi, etc. Tulsi, Vishnu, Krishna, Lakshmi, etc. Kadamba, Krishna Bear, Shiv, Durga, etc. Vata Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, etc. The various trees and plants are not only worshipped, but cutting green trees have also been prohibited and punishments prescribed for the offenders. Indian society had been very much aware of the fact that indiscriminate destruction of plants and forests would result in diseases and pollution of the atmosphere. One of the early historical evidences of this nature comes from the inscription engraved on pillars and rocks at the behest of Ashoka, the famous Mauryan emperor in the 3rd century BC. One of the pillar edicts, number 5, found at Rampurva in Bihar and issued by him in 243 BC, provides elaborate injunctions relating to the environment. This edict may even be taken as one of the earliest historical records focusing on conservation practices to be followed by people in general. The text of this edict reads as below. Thus saith King Priyadarshi, beloved of the gods. 26 years after my coronation, I have declared the following species of animals exempt from slaughter, vis-a-vis parrot, meana, ruddy geese, wild geese, bats, mango trees, ants, terrapins, boneless fish, ganga, puputakas, skatefish, tortoise, and porcupines, leaf ears, 12 antler stags and bulls set at liberty, household vermin, rhinoceros, white pigeons, village pigeons, and all the quadrupeds which are neither useful nor edible. Those she-goats, ewes, and sows which are either pregnant or milk are not to be slaughtered, nor their young ones which are less than 6 months old. Husks containing living beings should not be burnt. Forests much not to be burnt either uselessly or to be destroyed living beings. The living must not be fed with the living. The text of this edict is self-explanatory. It gives a list of creatures that were declared protected and it was forbidden to slaughter them. Injury to living creatures in other ways was also prohibited. The conservation of forests was earnestly propagated. Forests as the living abode of a variety of creatures would help protect a variety of species. The injunctions concerning fish were invoked perhaps to protect them during the breeding season. For its date, which is as early as the 3rd century BC, the edict is unparalleled in propagating conservation ethics. The Indian culture in ancient and medieval times provided a system of moral guidelines towards environmental preservation and conservation. Environmental ethics as propounded by ancient scriptures and the seers continued to exist in society and was practiced by not only the common man but even by rulers and kings. The principles were properly knitted with the Indian way of life. Even very minor things creating environmental problems were dealt with, giving proper solutions. The attitude towards nature is apparent in the teachings of sects like Bishnois from medieval Rajasthan. The founder of the Bishnoi sect, Jamboji, prescribed 29 rules for his followers. Most of this suggested maintenance of harmony with the environment, such as the prohibition of cutting green trees and animal slaughter. Jamboji's teachings, which were congruent with the interests of the common man, became immensely popular. Maharaja Ajit Singh issued a parwana restraining the cutting of green trees in 1754 years, that tantamounts to 1698 AD. Anup Singh, king of Bikaner, prohibited cutting of green trees in the villages dominated by Bishnois in 1752, that tantamounts to 1696 AD. Similarly, in 1878, tantamounting to 1821 AD, Man Singh, the king of Jodhpur, issued a similar order concerning the khejari tree. King Takht Singh in 1900 VS, that tantamounts to 1843 AD, extended the scope of this legislation by prohibiting the slaughter of any animal in the villages dominated by Vaishnavis. Another popular saint, Jasnath Ji, who existed from 1482 to 1506 AD, a contemporary of Jamboji, also endorsed the importance of the preservation of the environment. In his teachings, the Jal tree, which formed the natural vegetation of the region, was accorded special protection. These teachings became popular in the region, which had traditionally sustained goat and sheep rearing. Conservation of green vegetation or prohibition on the slaughter of animals seems to be an attempt towards protecting their livelihoods. Conservation practices in history. Conservation has a checkered history. It has over time been preoccupied with natural ecosystems and the animal world. Modern conservation attitudes and practices have emerged largely within the context of Western society's socio-economic traditions. The political and economic upheavals that Western society had experienced have shaped these attitudes. The philosophical leanings of the Judeo-Christian viewpoint on man and nature have already largely informed Western views of conservation. Two ideas constitute the core of this position: the right of exploitation of nature by man, unfettered by any serious ethical consideration, and the responsibility of stewardship. The fundamental Judeo-Christian belief holds that nature was created to serve the human race. Henceforth, the exploitation of nature is a natural, legitimate pursuit. This view does not endow the environment and its inhabitants with protective separates that prohibited exploitation. By the 17th century, Europeans were equipped with increasingly powerful technology and a growing ability to modify large areas of the earth. During this period, the attitudes of explorers and colonists were oriented more towards immediate personal overstatement of the land they visited and settled than towards any concern for the long-term health and productivity of the newly discovered countries. Soil erosion as well as the destruction of natural vegetation and wildlife accompanied the spread of European colonization. Nevertheless, some conservation ideas and practices were also promoted during the same era. Forest conservation, for example, developed some beginnings because of the disappearance of natural forests as a result of the increasing demand for wood fuel for industrial use. The 19th century, however, witnessed unusually severe environmental exploitation and destruction. In Africa, many forms of wildlife were hunted to extinction, and most of the large mammals were reduced to numbers that endangered their survival. Even the largely predatory animals were nearly exterminated, and some of them subsequently became extinct. Many types of birds that once had occurred in great abundance were wiped out. Logging and fires combined to menace the once luxurious forests. Livestock populations were allowed to increase to levels far above what the natural foray could support. The process of overforaying damaged the range lands to such a degree that they have not yet recovered. The grasslands were overgrazed and native vegetation was eliminated. By the middle decades of the 19th century, biology was undergoing a revolutionary change in its view of the natural world, that is, the replacement of a static, creationist view of life by an evolving mechanist view. The concept of natural selection replaced the creationist's view of the original living species with a mechanistic process of interaction with nature. The evolutionary view also opened the eyes of many to the fact that change in the environment, including change caused by humans, could bring about the extinction of many kinds of organisms, as the fossil records demonstrated. It could have been predicted that the modern conservation movement would have its beginnings not in the settled lands of the old world, but in those areas of the new world where, within the memory of a single generation, there had been extreme change in the landscape and similar change in the abundance of wildlife. World War II suddenly diverted attention from conservation issues. It also initiated an era of unparalleled economic expansion and explosive growth of technology and the human population. The result was exponential growth in the pollution of air, land, and water by chemicals and chemical waste. The attention of the world community to the issues related to the conservation of the environment was bound to be attracted by it. In the post-war scenario, serious attention was paid to the issue. It was seriously realized that the global commons were being increasingly threatened by a wide variety of real and potential environmental problems. Since the 1950s, environmental issues have been catapulted onto the center stage of global politics. International organizations are now seriously involved, and an elusive consensus on a global action plan is being attempted. Dear students, various developmental activities are rapidly destroying nature and its finely maintained and fragile balance and interdependence created over millions of years. The destruction of nature has gathered speed in the last 2 decades, and we are fast heading towards complete devastation and destruction of ecology. Man and society have ruthlessly robbed nature and have made a desert of the earth. But the worst crime man and society continue to commit is to deprive the planet of its deep, fresh core of dense forests. Those forests that sustain man and all living beings and provide them with life-giving oxygen. Human life depends on conservation because life depends on the biosphere, the relatively restricted zone of air, water, soil, and rock in which all life on Earth exists. The ultimate goal of conservation is to keep the biosphere in good condition. The ecological situation is currently so severe that if we do not take immediate action, things will spiral out of control and beyond rehabilitation. Man's diverse activities in many aspects of daily life, notably in the industrial and agricultural sectors, are destroying nature at an alarming rate. Man creates circumstances for self-destruction by harming the environment. The entire plan for civilization's future development must change dramatically in all disciplines, else our survival is in jeopardy. Dear students, this brings today's lecture to conclusion. See you in the next sitting with another topic. Hope you have understood today's content fully. Try to improvising your memory and making your knowledge rich by self-reading and by other means of communication and self-study. Till then, goodbye and good night.